Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello, everybody, everybody. Hi, my name is Eddie Phillips. This is the Erudition Network, and as like every Thursday, this is the Erudition Network interactive Black History and Knowledge session. Sorry, we had a little bit of a late delay here today, but we are here like we are every Thursday. If you're new to the program and just coming and joining us for the first time, this is a Black History interactive live session that we do every Thursday where we welcome questions. We talk about Black history subjects that are not necessarily covered well in our education system. And we dare to dive in and to go into waters and areas where folks seem to try to either ignore or they just don't know about. So every Thursday, I am here with you. My name is Eddie Phillips. I am I guess you call me a public historian. I have studied history for the better part of 3 decades, and I am excited every week to get in here and talk about Black history. When I say that, though, and I want to make sure that this is understood. I am also saying world and American, European, Eastern, Western, however you want to term it, that history, because Black history is a part of all of those histories, even though majority of the time this is ignored, and many of us did not learn a lot about what Africans, our African ancestors, what they did in this world before what is known as documented. See, that's a key there, documented history. But then the question then arises on who's documenting it. That's always the issue, right? This session every week is a labor of love, because I do this with the idea that I want people to learn. And having said that, I was thinking earlier as we were going through different things, trying to prepare for this session. I was thinking, over the last couple of weeks, I have, in my opinion, I want to apologize for something for some of the viewers who have been there. And not for anything that we've put out. We've not put out anything. We fact check everything that we do. But I want to say this. I do this Black History session every week, and there are times where it feels almost like a thankless job, and that you're doing because you know that it's needed. And I made the mistake recently of making a comment in which I said that I would stop this show, and that I would, because I didn't feel like we were getting the participation or the viewership that we needed. And I had to check myself on that recently and say, it's not about the clicks, the subscribes, and everything. That definitely helps us as a channel. But it's more about right now trying to get our people to understand the importance of our history, of who we are, where we come from. It's important for us to better have a hold as we go through these troubled times that we're going through, or what our ancestors went through, what we contributed. And so I have to apologize, because I will tell you this unequivocally tonight. I'm not going to stop this program. There could be 2 people, 3 people, 1 person in here during a live session, but that's 1 person or 2 people who will be getting the knowledge that is needed. And I encourage all of you who come on and watch us later and watch the replays, leave a question. Leave a question for us. I promise you that I try very hard to answer questions. I've done at least 3 shows recently that were basically generated by viewers who had questions, who saw something, excuse me as I clean my glass while I'm talking to you, who saw something in history that, or had a question about something and wanted us to go into, and we had great discussions on it here live on the show. And I encourage you to go back and watch those lessons on our YouTube channel. And we're going to drop that YouTube channel. Hey, Mike, what's up, man? YouTube channel in our chat. Teddy, if you could do that, our actual YouTube channel that people can go to and subscribe. The thing about the subscription and the bell is, if you go there, you will be able to know when we come on and to be, be aware of what we're talking about. So I encourage you to do that. I really do. I also encourage you to share. Share. You see at the bottom of my screen there's a ticker. And I want to thank some of our viewers, my aunt Juanita Phillips, Pastor Sarton, Pastor Razor, different people who have really contributed and tried to help us with Erudition. Your assistance and your help is greatly appreciated, and it definitely goes to the things that I'm trying to do to grow our network. These things cost to try to do things the way you want to. So I really appreciate all of you. I had to call you out, but I have to say, I thank you all. It is greatly appreciated. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say something tonight. You may have heard me on many occasions talk about our ancestors who came here before Columbus. It's a topic that I've talked about for years because it angers people. It greatly angers people. They feel that when I say Columbus, that what I'm doing is I'm blowing off the age of discovery and the things that you're taught in your history books. Well, to some extent I am. Excuse me. To some extent I am. And there's a reason why. Okay? Because a lot of it is based on fallacy. Not necessarily a lie, but a lot of fallacy, right? And we need to define it that way, because if we call it just a lie, right, then we say that every part of it is wrong. But a fallacy indicates that something is just it's a mistaken belief based on some unsound thoughts, maybe a little bit of delusion, misbelief, misconceptions, false stories, things like that. You get my point. So when I talk about Columbus and people get mad, I often laugh because I say to myself, wait a minute. Why would you believe that in the entire time that human beings have walked this planet? And remember, about a week or so ago, we talked about the origin of species. We talked about the progression of man out of Africa. We talked about how all of these, where the first human beings were found and things of that nature, right? So when we talk about Columbus and we try to tell ourselves that the only time out of all of that time, out of all prehistory, that no one other than the people who came across, they always talk about the Bering Strait, that those were the only people who ever arrived over here, right? And we allow ourselves to be caught up in that lie, because that's really what it is, right? And we ignore that African people, that life came out of Africa, and that people had traveled over here, right, for centuries, right? And we ignore the fact that people know they technology, shared understanding of things that are across the planet, shared understandings of how to build fire, shared understandings on how to make weapons, shared understanding on what to hunt, what to eat, all of these things. Shared understanding does not come out of an isolated place, out of an isolated mind. So when we look at what has been done and what has been said in history, if you consider the fact that life on this planet estimably started 300,000 years ago. That's the earliest known human remains that are found, based around 300,000 years ago. And if we consider that, right, and we say that people only lived in one area, one place. They never went anywhere else. Well, we sound like idiots, right? But this is how history has been taught to us, right? It has been taught to us this way on purpose. On purpose. There is a great book. Yep. As if you know me, I'm always going to give you a book. There's a great book out there. It's called The Gift of Black Folks. Last week, I told you to read The Souls of Black Folks. Now I'm telling you to read W.B. Du Bois's The Gift of Black Folks, right? And it's a great book. It's an older book. But Dr. Du Bois goes in and he tries to break down for us the understanding, right, of what Africans, what Black folks, what we gave to this world. And interestingly, in that book, he talks about something that I'm going to ask the few of you who are on here live, and then I'm going to actually say for any of you all who watch the replay, take a moment, and I'm going to ask you this question. The name California comes from the name Califia. Can anybody out there right now, the 4 or 5 that I have online right now, can you tell me what the word Califia, where that comes from? That gave the name to what we now call California. I'll give you about 30 seconds for that. And that will give me a chance to send out any reminder here for folks who are not on. And I'll actually type that out for you in the chat so you know how that is spelled. Do you know what that name means? You can go Google it. Go Google it. If you can't think of it, go Google it. I'm often, I tell people, I don't care if you Google. The biggest thing for me is for you to understand the information, not that you're just getting it from me. Yes, it is a Spanish name, Mike. That is true. But it has a specific purpose and reason for why it's called that. Come on now. Come on, y'all. I get you, Google. All right. Here's the thing. Califia is derived from a story written by a 16th century writer named Garcia del Matalavo. He published a book around 1511. And in the book, he writes about this queen named Califia. Let me see if I can pull that up. A queen named Califia. Now, what is important about this is that when Columbus came over here, right, they didn't have, from what we're told in history, they had no knowledge. He wasn't even in what we call the Americas where we are. He was in Hispaniola, right? What you call the Bahamas and the things down there. He wasn't even in California. But a Spanish writer named, as I said, Garcia de Matova, in around early 1500s, wrote a story about an African queen over a tribe full of women who lived in a paradise that the only way that men could come in was they were only allowed to come in at a certain time. They were strong. He describes their hard bodies, their courage. He talks about how independent that they were. And I was trying to pull up the actual quote. He says, "Know ye that on the right hand of the Indies there is an island called California, very near the terrestrial paradise, which is people with black women without any men among them, because they were accustomed to live after the fashion of the Amazons. They were strong and hard bodies and had great courage." Now, why am I telling you this? Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because in 1510, a Spaniard realized that Africans had already been, he wrote it in his story in prose, but he understood that Africans had already been here to the Americas. Now, we also know from Columbus himself and his writings and the people who came over with him that they knew about the blacks, that Africans had been here. And they actually described some of the people that they saw as short men and women, similar in form to Africans. They talked about the Negro continents. They talked about how they presented themselves. We also know that Columbus came looking for gold, and that he knew gold was here because the Africans had been here. I've told you before that the Africans call their gold guanine, and that their gold had spices in it. They like to smell their gold. And that the people of Hispaniola, the Indians as they call them, of Hispaniola, they had similar gold. And they told Columbus of people who had came, and they used the African Mandingo word guanine. So again, the presence of blacks who were trading, not conquering, that's a key here that I want us to go into again tonight. They were not conquering. They were trading. They were friendly. They would come over. Some stayed. We know that many of the Teano on the other parts of Hispaniola some of them were known to be darker skin. We know that they had crossed over and came into what we now was the continental United States. Into places like Mexico. We know this because there's evidence to the kind. We know this from the basalt heads that are along the coast in places in Mexico. We know this also because there are indicators all throughout the Americas. All throughout the Americas, where they left relics of themselves. On the advertisement that I did for this episode, I put a mound. There is a mound in Mississippi. It is given to people as if this was just a Native American mound. But we see mound builders throughout the Mississippi. There are mounds that are in Missouri. There are mounds that are through all parts of the country. Here is the thing. Africans built mounds. The technology that shows you how mounds are built, the way that they look are very similar throughout, not only in the Americas, we also see some in some parts of Europe. And archaeologists and historians have tried to disqualify this because it's pre-Columbian, because some of them are thousands of years old. And they indicate a cultural connection from people of Africa all throughout the Americas and in some parts of Europe. But as I told you earlier when we were talking, these are shared understandings. If your grandmother makes a pie a certain way, and she taught your mama and your aunties how to make this pie a certain way, and everybody keeps passing it down 2-3 generations later, right? The knowledge came from a person, and it is shared, and it is similar. It may not look or taste exactly the same as the original person made it, but it is still based on the same idea, the same connection. And so I want us to understand, hey, oh, good to see you, Pastor Razor. Glad you can make it. I want us to understand these connections. You could go around through the Americas. Here in Colorado, we have the cliff dwelling Indians, right? We have those homes that were built in the cliffs that men went to go find. It's down there in Colorado Springs. But if you were to go to Africa and go look in the Nubian culture, and you would see that the Nubians built cliff homes too. You would see throughout parts of Africa that cliff homes were built. These things in rock because man used what was available. Here's something to that. The reason why no one wants to draw a connection between the African and the indigenous people over here is because it's anathema to anything that they have taught us about European imperialism and conquest. It is not something that they want us to dwell on. And as a matter of fact, when archaeologists and historians bring this up, they have called us, and different people who have brought it up years before, pseudo-historians, pseudo-archaeologists. False, right? They tell us that this is all theory. Even though when you look at a basalt head, I have an example right here. I think it's been a while since I've shown this. And I thank my friend Ken Richter for this. This is not an idol, but this is a basalt head. This is what you see on the coast of Mexico. It is believed, they tried to say that these are Olmecs. This is an example of an Olmec, right? But what has been discovered is you will notice something here. You will notice what is called, we didn't term it that way, they did, Negro features. The wide nose, the lips. It is believed that these heads were built to honor those Africans who came over, not looking for conquest, not looking to take over, simply looking to trade and to grow. You know, I was asking my sons recently, we had a conversation, and I asked them, what is the term syncretism? Right? What does that mean? And I was reading one of my books. One of the historians was saying that Americans don't believe, though we lie, and we say we do, in syncretism. Syncretism. We don't believe it as a political ideology. We don't believe it as a cultural ideology. We don't believe it. And if you want to know what syncretism is, it is the merging of cultures, not to dominate, but to amalgamate, to grow together, to join in a way which does not take away from either side. We know from history, we know from American history, that this has never been the approach of America. And because there is no belief in syncretism, there is an empirical belief that we must dominate. Rather, when the Spanish came over, when Columbus came over, and they took over, and they knew things that we are, right now are denied in knowing. I told you a little while ago that Garcia del Montalvo in 1510 wrote about African women living in California. They named California based on Montalvo's stories because the Spanish never forgot it. They never forgot it because they knew things that we pretend not to know. They knew that Africans were here. They knew that they knew that Africans came and Africans had gold. They knew that the Portuguese found gold in Africa. And the idea was, is this just another place that the Africans were getting the gold from? It's not based on pseudo-history. It's based on customs, traditions, things that have been passed that are not taught to us. But let's think about that. In 1510, Montalvo wrote that story, 1510, 1511. When Columbus came over, and for the better part of a decade or more, they took as much gold and people as they could. They did everything that they could to go and find those places that were described as if they had a map, because they did. And in 1501, they passed a law. They passed a law saying that the Indians could not sell or buy guanine, gold, things that they had used for their own, for their culture, to build spear tips and to trade. They took that from them. And they cut off the trade to make it that this was a Spanish trade. And they trafficked guanine, the gold. And we lie to ourselves. When you go and look in Africa, you will find that Africans were growing tobacco, growing cotton, and that they also, the belief is, and we know it, that one of the reasons why Africans were so adept at coming over and picking and tending tobacco, cotton, sugarcane, because these were things that they were already doing in Africa. We know that cotton, the sweet potato, the peanut, these different things, there are versions of it in Africa. But then they say that this is how they play it. They tell you that this was the Columbus exchange. I'm sure many of you were taught that in school, that Columbus bought these things over to Europe and to the world. And before that, That did not exist, but that is a lie. We know that trade was going on farther into the Middle East for centuries before Columbus ever came over to the Americas. Now, we're not saying that everything came from Africa, from the Black person, but we are saying that they were aware of it and that they knew about it because the Arabs and the Blacks were using it. The Arabs were smoking tobacco, and tobacco was known in Africa, and it is mentioned in many African writings. We know that cotton was used. So you take a people to the Americas, and you don't have to teach them much because much of it has already been taught to them. But we act as if, I agree, Pastor Razor, but we act as if everything came from the Europeans. They discovered it, they mined it, they produced it, they made it better. But let's get back to something here. Let's get back to those mound builders. Let's get back to the mounds that are all throughout the United States that they told us were just the Indian mounds, right? But the lie of that is so obvious. The Arawak, who interacted with Africans, and there is some indication because it's in their DNA. They show their interaction with Africans. History will trump it up as these were just fugitive Black folks. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We talked about the Maroons, right? That all of these tribes post Columbus, that's when we migrated over here. But we know that they migrated northward. We know that they came north because we know that Cortez, we know that Ponce de Leon, we know that people went north. We know that they went north. But we act as if the Europeans created everything. And we actually teach that is actually taught to our kids. Actually, very little was created by Europeans. They took what others had developed and made improvements. That is true. And they will tell you that they improved it. And they will brag about it. And this goes back to something that I said earlier about documented history. It is not to say that Africans didn't document things. We didn't document them as conquerors. Being a person that spent the better part of his adulthood in the military, I will tell you that when you go to war, you document your wins. When you conquer something, you document what you conquered. You make laws, you put things down because it's empirical. I want people to know this is mine. When you go visit a land, when you go on vacation, you may take a picture. That's what we do. You might draw a picture. You might write it in a story. You might tell about it. I once visited a land where people did this, but there's no documentation where you're saying this is mine. I own this. And what we have found in the history that we are taught in our school books is empirical, right? We're taught about conquest. And so conquest validates the idea that they created something, that they are something, that they are better, that they are special, that they are the ones who made something happen. And because we're not writing down or documenting anything because we don't want to conquer, It's blown off as pseudo, not real. But the history, follow the breadcrumbs. They tell you exactly where things come from. When the Spanish came over here, one of the things I was saying, and I was thinking, trying to pull something up. One of the Spanish explorers talked about the sweet potato, and as I was talking about that earlier, it came back to my mind. And one of the things that was quoted, this is quoted during Columbus's time. Vito said that the sweet potato came with the evil lot of blacks, and it was taken very well, and it was profitable and good sustenance. That's written. That is written. But yet, we don't teach our kids that. We tell them that Columbus made something, did something, and that he exchanged it. As Pastor Razor said on here, they made it better. I laugh because when I was overseas, Africans love yams. The sweet potatoes and yams are part of their meal. It's not something that is European, but it is African. We look at the mound builders. Let's keep getting back to that. I stressed the mound builders recently because I had a conversation with someone not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and where we were talking about the connection between Native Americans and Africans. And he took a little bit of an offense to it because in his mind, he felt that I was saying that there is no such thing as Mesoamerican or Native American culture. No, I'm not saying that. And I had to stress the idea again of syncretism. The phrase "as conquerors" is the point. The conquerors got to tell the story the way that they want. The story is propagated through history. They also tell the stories of the defeated, and it's not to the benefit of the defeated, not at all. Because when you conquer somebody, you don't care about how they feel about it. They're now part of you. They have to fall under you. One of the greatest examples of that are Romans, the Mongols, right? You take over an area and everybody has to fall to you. There was great knowledge taken from all areas of the world for some of these monarchies that we celebrate and teach our kids about in history. They stole gold, knowledge, understanding. They took all of that. And it always blows my mind because we act as if we don't understand why archaeologists and scientists are still digging in Africa, in Egypt, in the Middle East. We don't understand why they're going down to South America and digging up towns and trying to find where these people came from. Because following those breadcrumbs tell you that they came from a place. And now I believe that God will not be mocked and that things will be exposed, and they have to be exposed with research, with analysis, with people doing the work. And that is happening. We also need to teach differently to prepare people of all cultures and to tell them about the lies and the myths and the fallacies. That's the word we used earlier. The fallacies that have been put out here, the falsifications to make people not go deeper. When you look at Black forts in Nubia, when you look at Black folks throughout the Congo, when you look at how Black folks built their homes and built their communities, and you go and you look at the South American cultures, and you see how close they are in areas like Brazil and Peru and Mexico. They will tell you that the Olmecs vanished. People who look like this, they vanished from history. How did that happen? It's easy to tell you something vanished than to tell you the truth. And so we have to dig deeper. We have to look deeper. We have to make sure we understand that there is connection here. There is connection here. And though we don't like to talk about the prehistoric, that's what gets me too. Let me cover that a little bit. When someone uses the term prehistoric, as me and Pastor were just saying, he just wrote on here too. What they're telling you is this is a time before they documented it. Prehistory. See, my story, his story, right? Nobody was writing anything down. But we know that that is a lie. We know that man wrote things down in a way that he could. I don't expect a person who lived 300 BC, I don't expect them to go and try to and talk to me on Newtonian law or an Einstein theory. I don't expect that. I expect them to describe what they saw, what they knew at that time in the best way that they could. That's just what it is. It's not saying they weren't smart for their era. It's that intelligence was based on that time. I did a show a couple of weeks ago where I talked to you about African math and how Africans would beat on drums to make what you saw as those pyramid shapes, hit dirt on drums. How they looked at the African termites, and they saw how they built their communities. All of these things, when you think about these things, as you go look through African history and you see the dwellings that were built, when you see, we always talk about the pyramids. And we say to ourselves, man, you know, that's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. And we ignore all of the other things that the Africans did on their continent that is left, that is still being dug up. People are finding and going to go look for these cultures because there is evidence, just like the pie I said earlier with your grandma. There's evidence that there was a great pie recipe somewhere. They're finding that Africans had batteries, things that could work as batteries, not just the Egyptians either. That's a misconception. What were they using those batteries for? And we get lost in all of the lunacy, right? And all of the lunacy that we are trying to find out what they know. Heck with what they know. Let's go and look and find out what is available, because right now you're living in an information age where you can learn just about anything. You can learn just about anything. They were keepers of, there was knowledge stolen and knowledge kept. Knowledge stolen and knowledge kept. When the world was launched into what was called the early Middle Ages, the term the Dark Ages, right? Because a lot of people couldn't read. The church, the priest, was the only one that was allowed to be able to read and to have access to relics and things and that they saw. And if it was something that did not go along with the Holy Roman Church at the time, many of it was either buried or destroyed because it did not go along with the ideas. And when those things were stripped, people didn't know what to do. Illness, disease. I often tell people we focus on the religious aspect of the Crusades, but we don't focus on the fact that the Crusades also ingratiated Europe again with an understanding of African and Middle Eastern culture. They didn't travel thousands of miles on ships that many died on, crossing unknown lands just for the worship or the ability to say that God willed it. No, they traveled down there also for what they thought was there, what they knew was there, the intelligence, the things that they later used. When you look at, I asked my sons about the 18th century, about the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment is nothing more than people realizing all of the things that happened in Africa, the things that had happened in the middle, in what was Africa at the time, the Middle East. And they had taken all of that knowledge, all of that understanding, and what did they use it for? To create where we live right now. They said they were enlightened. They were intellectuals. They were scholarly. They had learned some things. But where did they learn it from? This is a lot to unpack tonight. And I didn't know how I was going to go about this lesson. I didn't. But what I did know is that we have to talk about this more. We have to talk about how we played, even after Columbus, how we played into this. Rather, we look at when Columbus came and we see how blacks came. There were blacks that came over with Columbus. Wasn't just slaves. If you look at the historical documents, anytime after Columbus arrived, I would tell you from 1495 onward, you will find people talking about blacks in the Americas, their ability to adapt in the Americas, their ability to explore, as if they knew this is what gets me again with this history, as if they knew where they were going. When the sugar culture took over and the indigenous people were dying off, were being killed, disease and murder, blacks became the choice, the slave. They could last longer. They could work longer. They could sit in the sun longer. They were a part of that civilization. And the Spanish had taken they had worked very hard to enslave blacks. They had worked very hard to get us into a place where we didn't have any rights. When you read Centro del Negro and you understand that the Spanish started to deny blacks the ability to be educated, the ability to own property, and they systematically worked us into a position of slavery that would later create chattel American slavery. But at the heart of it, while all that was being figured out, the denying and everything was going on, blacks, Africans were leading conquistadors into the lower Americas, to the Mississippis, getting to the Mississippi River, going up the coast. They, at many times, were the only ones that survived. The only ones that the indigenous people there allowed to survive. And that is another part. That's a deeper history. We have to spend a whole episode going on that. Talking about the conquistadors who came over and tried to go north. And when you read about Las Casas and how he talks about what was going on in the Americas, and yet the black man was allowed to go places and to do things that others could not do. They were there. And we don't know many of their names. We know them, but they're not shared to us. If I ask you who Nefelo del Arano, they don't know who he is. We know that there were black slaves, as I said, with Cortez. We don't know. Those names aren't given to us. We know that the Indians, the indigenous people, respected some of these people so much that it is written that when the Pacific Ocean was discovered, one of the blacks was able to direct, not beat, to direct the work of over 500 indigenous people simply because they trusted him. And yet, here in our books, hearing what we learn, all that's not put out. Most of that's not told. Because it's not important to be told. Because as we said earlier, the longer we are denied our history, the more we feel, some of us feel helpless because we don't know. History is one of the most boring subjects in school, ladies and gentlemen. It has historically been that. And I used to always say, why is that? Because you don't find yourself in it. Then how can you be interested in it? If you don't know who you are in it, then you're like, okay, I'm telling somebody else's story. And that's unfortunate. We unpacked a little bit tonight, and I did it because I really wanted us to kind of get further into this history. I'm working on so many different things when it comes to history, and it's frustrating. It's just me. But it is so important to me that we talk about this. I think I've said before that many people think when you ask them the question, when did the first black people arrive in the Americas? Everybody always tells me 1619. And I shake my head because I didn't ask you when did the first indentured or slaved blacks enter the Americas. That's not the question. The first blacks arrived here at around 1528. As a matter of fact, we know for a fact that probably around 1528, there were more than 1,000 black, quite more than 1,000 blacks in the New World. We know that. Well before 1619. We know that blacks were here. They accompanied, as I told you, De Soto. We know that they accompanied Cortez. So how do we say that they didn't come to 1619? We know that a black man owned land as of 1555 under Spanish authority in Chile. It is amazing to me how history is taught to us in these imperialistic ways, and yet we continue to allow our kids to be taught it, and we do not encourage the idea and the free flow of understanding and information like we're putting out here tonight. We don't encourage it because many of us, honestly, we weren't taught it and we don't know it. But then there's another part of it too. Comfortability. There is a comfort in and I'm not saying that anybody is ignorant, but there is a comfort in ignorance. What I don't know, I can't be expected to uphold. What I don't know, I can't be expected to teach, to pass on. And there are some people who don't want to go back and think about any of those things because they all lauded up to slavery. But that's not the story. That's not the story. And you weren't always hated. You weren't always hated. History does not show that blacks were always hated. When Garcia del Montalvo wrote his story, when he wrote his story about Califia, when he talked about California, he wrote that story in a romantic way. And he strongly insinuated the idea of the strong and tough and intelligent Black people. When Greek writers wrote about Blacks, they wrote about us as being intelligent, having lands, riches, and understanding far beyond where they were from. Writers like Homer wrote stories to indicate that that Africans, that Blacks, were so intelligent that they had to be touched by God. God's in his mind, because that's the way the Greeks saw it. But that's how they saw us. History has not always written us as a conquered, enslaved people. But if we continue to tell ourselves that we play no part in history, then we will continue to lie. And this is why I spend so much of my time delving into books. You all see every week these group of books. This is my dump spot right here. I have books everywhere. I'm always reading and I'm always acquiring knowledge because I want to. I follow those breadcrumbs. And I say, wait a minute. This doesn't make any sense. Well, we're up on this hour. We started a little bit late. So we're at 6:12 right now. I'm going to put a book in here for you all tonight. Another book. Put another book up in here. See if I can get the name. There we go. I want you, if you get a chance, to go out, try to get it for free. It may be for free. I told you last week to get The Souls of Black Folks. Read every year. Go get another book by W.B. Du Bois. It's called The Gift of Black Folks. Great book. Some of the things, not all, some of the things that I talked about tonight, you may find in this book. He specifically starts to talk about the Americas later on, slavery and things like that, and what we bought to. But it's a good book. It's a good book for you to own, a good book for you to have, and I'll put that in our comments. Because again, I want you to grow your understanding and your knowledge. Another book, I had another book that I wanted up on here too. It is one of my Carter G. Woodson books. A really good book that I think you should, there it is, okay. The Century of Negro Migration. We're going to talk about this next week. If you can go find Carter G. Woodson's book, A Century of Negro Migration, we're going to talk about some of the migratory things that have happened with Blacks. Another good book to get, and I will put these things in chat. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try to always link you to a place where you can get a book for free. That may mean you have to read it online. If that's not your thing, I will also give you a place like Amazon, things like that, where you can try to go find the book. It may require you to go and look in a library that's over in Africa. It may require you to go look at one of the national libraries over somewhere in Europe. But here's the thing. It's going to grow your knowledge. It's going to grow your knowledge. So 2 books, The Gift of Black Folks and A Century of Negro Migration. 2 books I want you to get, 2 books I want you to venture to start trying to read and open up your aperture a little bit more. All right. Thank you to everybody who came on here with us for this hour. We had some technical difficulties, so we started a little bit late. But I will tell you, I appreciate you. Share Erudition, ladies and gentlemen. Share Erudition. Share Erudition. Oh, almost forgot. Next week, this weekend, starting Saturday, we're going to be on every day, except for Sunday. We will be doing some sort of show, some sort of program will be on all week. The point of this is to increase our viewership, to get more people to subscribe. I have 186 people that follow me, I think, on Facebook on one of my things, and that is not what's on our YouTube. So we want to try to get people to subscribe to YouTube, help us grow this program. I not want to be behind my desk every episode doing this. I might want to be out somewhere, taking you to go actually see something here in Colorado where I am, or going out and actually doing something that we can actually explore something live. But I can't do all that just based on what Eddie can just bring to it. I need your help. Go out there, encourage people to subscribe. Continue to join us on Mondays and on Thursdays. My wife's on Mondays. And stand by, because we have some things that will be going on Saturday and all throughout the week. Tina will have to do 2 shows. She's going to do one on Monday and one on Wednesday. And I will have one on Thursday. And I will be on Saturday, this coming Saturday. And I will probably be on another day. But we're going to be doing a lot of different things. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to learn. Share it with your kids. Some of these things will be shorts, so they don't have to be here for an hour. Join us. Help us to learn with you. All right. Thank you again for your time. I just hit my mic, so if I bumped your ears, please forgive me. But have a good one. Until I see you on Saturday. I will be on Saturday. Time yet to be determined, but I will be on Saturday afternoon. So that we can talk a little bit more about some more history. All right, everybody. Have a good one.